She left for her morning run at 6:07 a.m. Her abandoned earbuds were found at 6:19. Her footprints, they just ended. How does a woman disappear from a popular jogging trail with a witness just yards behind her? Tonight, we peel back the layers of a vanishing that defies logic and shatters a family, leaving behind a trail of secrets and a haunting question. Can you ever truly know the secrets hidden within the people you love? The sun, a sleepy orange orb, was just nudging over the tree line, painting the sky with soft, hopeful colors over Cypress Creek National Park. And then Clara Donovan, a vibrant splash of color in her bright blue running gear, stepped out of her perfectly manicured home. She was an art teacher, you see, someone who saw beauty even in the mundane. And every morning, like a sacred ritual, she would lace up her trusty running shoes, the soles a little worn from countless miles, and head for the winding trails of Cypress Creek. This morning ritual, truth be told, was her quiet rebellion. Her husband, Marcus, a sharp, successful architect, had a way of building walls, not just homes, and those walls had started to feel suffocating around Clara. And then, as the first birds began to chirp their morning songs, Clara and Marcus had a quick, hushed argument over breakfast. It was about a canceled credit card, something small on the surface, but it felt heavy, like a stone in her stomach. Clara, ever the optimist, tried to smile as she left, a thin, stretched-out smile, and then she caught a fleeting glimpse of her reflection in the hallway mirror. A moment later, she was gone, swallowed by the early morning light. What followed was a silence in the house, thicker than the morning fog. But that wasn't just any morning. This was the morning the delicate cracks in Clara's life, the ones she tried so hard to hide, would finally shatter into a million pieces. From there, Clara's familiar footsteps found the soft earth of the Cypress Creek Trail. The air smelled of damp earth and pine, a scent that usually soothed her soul. She put in her earbuds, a playlist of upbeat pop tunes ready to accompany her steady pace. Meanwhile, about 50 yards behind her, Ethan Vance, another early bird jogger, settled into his own rhythm. Ethan was a creature of habit too, always the same route, the same time. He saw Clara ahead, a bright blue beacon against the green of the trees, and then, for just a moment, he glanced down at his watch to check his pace. When he looked up again, Clara was simply gone. As if time had frozen, he stopped dead in his tracks. Without thinking, Ethan ran forward, his heart pounding a frantic drum against his ribs. The silence grew louder around him. He found her earbuds lying perfectly side by side near a gnarled, ancient oak tree, their white wires looking stark against the dark earth. They were still warm, almost as if she'd just taken them off. But Clara was gone. Just like that. Ethan's hands began to shake. He pulled out his phone, his fingers fumbling as he dialed 911. The dispatcher's calm voice seemed far away, lost in the sudden, terrifying emptiness of the forest. Looking back, he should have known something was terribly wrong when he found those earbuds. They were Clara's prized possession, never ever left behind. Soon after, the first responders arrived, their sirens wailing like tortured banshees tearing through the quiet morning. Sheriff Miller, a man whose face was etched with the weariness of 1,000 small-town troubles, stepped out of his patrol car. He looked at Ethan, then at the empty trail, then back at Ethan, his eyes squinting against the rising sun. Detective Anya Sharma, a sharp woman with eyes that missed nothing, followed closely behind him. She scanned the scene, her gaze lingering on the earbuds, then on the gnarled oak, as if the tree itself held a secret. Her gut twisted. Something wasn't right here. This wasn't a simple case of someone getting lost. As the news spread like wildfire through the quiet town, Marcus Donovan arrived at the scene. He looked distraught, his expensive running clothes disheveled, but Anya noticed his tears seemed to dry a little too quickly, like a summer puddle under the hot sun. Marcus pulled Sheriff Miller aside, his voice hushed, insistent. "She probably just ran away," he mumbled, loud enough for others to hear. "We've been having some problems." Not only that, but Lena, Clara's sister, showed up minutes later, her face pale, her hands trembling. She looked genuinely terrified, yet her eyes darted around, avoiding direct contact, especially with Marcus. Lena collapsed onto a park bench, sobbing uncontrollably. "My sister, gone," she whispered, over and over, but there was a subtle hint of something else in her voice, something like deep, long-held resentment, a feeling that clawed at Anya's mind. Meanwhile, the initial search efforts began. A scattering of local volunteers, their faces grim, moved through the trees, calling Clara's name. The forest, usually a comforting embrace, now felt like a gaping maw, ready to swallow anyone whole. The local news crews descended, their cameras flashing like angry eyes, turning Clara's private agony into a public spectacle. The general consensus, fueled by Marcus's hushed comments, quickly became, "She probably just ran away from a bad marriage." People whispered, they pointed, they made assumptions, because in a small town, a scandal is a banquet, and everyone wants a seat at the table. But then, as the day bled into afternoon, a chilling detail emerged. Detective Sharma, her mind buzzing with unspoken questions, reviewed Ethan Vance's dashcam footage. Ethan, being the methodical type, always recorded his drive to the park. The footage showed the entrance to the trail, perfectly clear. Anya watched it, frame by agonizing frame, until she saw it. A flicker of movement, a shadowy figure, darting into the woods just seconds before Clara would have reached that exact spot. It was too fast to make out clearly, like a ghost, but it was there. A second figure, vanishing just as Clara did. The air felt heavier. What's worse, the police check of Clara's home revealed something deeply unsettling. Her phone was sitting on her bedside table, fully charged. For a woman who was practically glued to her phone, this was an almost unthinkable detail. It meant she hadn't simply walked away in a huff. It meant she had left her connection to the outside world behind, a deliberate act. Why didn't I see it sooner? The signs were always there. The silence in the house, the hurried argument, the discarded phone, each a tiny thread in a tapestry of dread. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, casting long, menacing shadows across Cypress Creek, Anya felt a cold dread creep into her bones. She pulled out a map of the park, spreading it across the hood of her patrol car. The scale of the search was overwhelming. This wasn't just a missing person. This was a vanishing act, a magic trick performed by shadows and secrets. Anya looked at Sheriff Miller, her eyes reflecting the deepening twilight. "Sheriff," she said, her voice low. "This wasn't just a runaway. This was something else, something planned." The wind carried a whisper through the trees, a sound like a distant, mournful cry. But then, as Anya studied the map, her flashlight beam danced over an old, forgotten section of the park, the Blackwood thicket, and she saw an almost invisible dotted line, leading not into the park, but underneath it, marked with a faded, disturbing symbol, a weeping eye. What was that dotted line? A forgotten trail? An old mapmaker's mistake? Or was it a hidden path to a truth more chilling than anyone could imagine? The Blackwood thicket, a place even seasoned hikers avoided, whispered secrets that night, secrets that would soon begin to unravel the vanishing of Clara Donovan. The next morning, the air still hung heavy with the scent of pine and unanswered questions. Detective Anya Sharma, her eyes bloodshot from a sleepless night, returned to the Cypress Creek Trail, the faded map of the park clutched in her hand. The dotted line, a faint suggestion of a path leading into the foreboding Blackwood thicket, nagged at her. It felt like a riddle, a breadcrumb left by a ghost. And then, as the first rays of sunlight pierced the dense canopy of trees, glinting off dew-kissed leaves, Anya decided to follow that whisper, that faint line that seemed to beckon her deeper into the wilderness. Meanwhile, back at the Donovan home, a different kind of storm was brewing. Marcus Donovan, trying to maintain his calm facade, found himself under increasing pressure. The house, usually a showcase of his meticulous taste, now felt like a cage. And then his phone rang, a jangling intrusion that made him jump. It was a reporter, relentlessly pushing for an exclusive, asking pointed questions about his marriage to Clara. Marcus, his voice strained, insisted on his innocence, painting a picture of a loving husband, worried sick. But his eyes, Anya would later observe, held a flicker of something else. Not just fear, but a cold, calculating anger. Across town, Lena, Clara's sister, sat huddled in her living room, clutching a mug of cold coffee. She watched the news, her face pale, her jaw tight. The reporter on screen showed a blurry photo of Clara, then cut to a shot of the police tape around the park entrance. Lena squeezed her eyes shut, wishing she could unsee the images, wishing she could unhear the whispers that followed her everywhere. Why didn't I see it sooner? The signs were always there. The quiet arguments between Clara and Marcus. The way Clara would sometimes flinch when Marcus raised his voice. The desperate sparkle in Clara's eyes when she talked about finding herself. Lena had dismissed them, pushed them aside because it was easier than confronting the uncomfortable truth. As the search widened, volunteers, their faces etched with a grim determination, fanned out across the park. The sheer scale of Cypress Creek National Park was daunting, a sprawling canvas of winding trails, rocky outcrops, and dense, unforgiving forest. It was like trying to find a single grain of sand on an endless beach, yet their efforts were tireless, driven by a desperate hope. But then, as the day wore on, that hope began to fray. Search dogs, usually so eager, seemed confused, circling in frustrated barks, their noses unable to pick up a clear scent beyond the initial discovery of Clara's earbuds. It was as if Clara had simply vanished into thin air, leaving no trace, no scent, no whisper of her passing. And then a new development. Sheriff Miller, his brow furrowed with concern, approached Anya. "Detective," he began, his voice low. "We've got an eyewitness, someone who saw Clara just before she disappeared." Anya's heart quickened. "Who?" she asked, her voice betraying her eagerness. "A local eccentric," Miller replied. "A hermit who lives on the fringes of the Blackwood thicket. Folks call him Old Man Silas. He claims he saw Clara." What followed was a slow, deliberate journey into the thicket, a place that felt alive with ancient secrets. The trees here were older, their branches gnarled and twisted, creating a perpetual twilight even in the middle of the day. The ground was uneven, treacherous, covered in thick moss and fallen leaves that muffled every sound. Anya moved carefully, her senses on high alert. The air grew colder here, carrying a damp, earthy smell. It was a place where light struggled to reach, a place that seemed to actively resist human intrusion. And just like that, Anya felt the fear, a cold, creeping sensation that began to bloom in her stomach. Eventually, they found Old Man Silas's shack, a ramshackle structure barely held together by rusted tin and weathered planks. Silas himself was a figure out of a folk tale, his face a roadmap of wrinkles, his eyes bright and piercing. He invited them in, offering them strong, bitter coffee. "Saw the girl," Silas croaked, his voice raspy like dry leaves rustling. "Pretty thing. Headed deeper into the thicket she was. And then—" He paused, his eyes glazing over, as if seeing something only he could perceive. "And then a shadow followed her. A dark one." Anya pressed him. "What kind of shadow, Silas? A person? An animal?" Silas just shook his head slowly. "A bad one. A twisting shadow, like a secret trying to hide." His words, while vague, sent a shiver down Anya's spine. It was unsettling, because it echoed her own deep, unarticulated fears. Meanwhile, back at the station, Marcus Donovan was brought in for a formal interview. He sat across from Detective Miller, his posture stiff, his eyes darting around the room as if searching for an escape route. Miller, a master of the slow burn, started gently, asking about Clara, their life, their dreams. Marcus spoke of Clara with a strained tenderness, almost too perfect. He described her as the light of his life, his muse. But then, when Miller subtly shifted to the morning of the disappearance, Marcus's composure began to fray. His story about being home asleep while Clara went for her run felt a little too rehearsed. He didn't know what haunted him more, the questions, or his own carefully constructed lies. Miller then introduced Lena into the interview room, hoping to catch Marcus off guard. Lena, pale and tearful, looked at Marcus with a mixture of fear and something else, something Anya had recognized earlier, a strange, almost desperate affection. Lena attempted to corroborate Marcus's alibi, her voice trembling, but her words were laced with subtle inconsistencies. She stumbled over dates, fumbled with times, making the simple act of confirming an alibi feel like a complicated dance. Marcus was home, she insisted, her voice rising slightly. He was with me, in the kitchen, making coffee. But then, she quickly corrected herself. No, he was still sleeping. The contradiction hung heavy in the air. The tension snapped. As the interview continued, Anya observed Lena closely. Lena seemed to be trying to protect Marcus, even as her own story fell apart. This wasn't just a sister worried about her brother-in-law. It was something deeper, something far more complex. It raised a question. What was Lena truly hiding? Was it just Marcus's alibi? Or was there something else, something far more personal, that tied her to his fate? Back at the Blackwood thicket, the search team pushed deeper, guided by Old Man Silas's vague directions. The terrain grew more challenging, the silence more profound. And then, a search volunteer, a young man named David, stumbled over something hidden beneath a thick pile of leaves. He called out, his voice echoing eerily through the trees. It was a small, ornate silver locket, tarnished with age, bearing the initials CD, Clara Donovan. It was Clara's locket, a gift from her grandmother, one she never took off. But the locket was strangely out of place. It wasn't on the main trail, or even a commonly used path. It was tucked deep within the thicket, near a shallow, muddy creek. Its presence here suggested not an accidental drop, but a deliberate placement, or perhaps a sign left in desperation. What's worse, the locket was empty. The small photographs it once held, tiny portraits of Clara as a child, were gone. It was a haunting detail. The absence spoke louder than any presence, like a missing piece in a puzzle, leaving a void that gnawed at Anya's mind. The space between facts burned. This was no simple lost item. This was a message or a warning, As the locket was bagged and tagged as evidence, Anya's thoughts drifted to Clara. Clara, the vibrant art teacher, who loved color and light. What forces had led her into this dark, unforgiving place? What terrors had she faced? And why on earth was her locket found here, in a place so remote, so hostile, with its contents deliberately removed? It was a question that would haunt Anya, shaping her investigation from that moment forward. Meanwhile, Sheriff Miller received a call from forensics. They had analyzed the initial footage from Ethan Vance's dashcam. The shadowy figure, that fleeting flicker of movement, was indeed a person. The quality was poor, but enough to confirm it wasn't an animal. And then, the forensics team made a shocking discovery. The person in the footage appeared to be wearing a distinctive hooded jacket, the kind favored by a local hiking group, known for their nocturnal excursions into the park. This wasn't just a random stranger. This was someone who knew the park, someone who could move silently through its shadows. It introduced a chilling possibility. Someone had been waiting for Clara. And just like that, the quiet suburban vanishing turned into something far more sinister. The possibility of an accidental disappearance faded, replaced by the cold, hard certainty of something deliberate, something dark. Anya looked at the Blackwood thicket, its ancient trees now looming like silent witnesses, holding their secrets tight. She knew, deep in her gut, that the truth lay hidden in its depths, waiting to be unearthed. But finding it would mean venturing into places far darker than any forest, into the hidden corners of human hearts. But then, As Anya packed up her gear, a faint, almost imperceptible detail caught her eye in the locket photo. A tiny etched symbol on its clasp, a symbol she recognized from old local legends, the mark of the Oracle of Whispering Pines. The locket's hidden symbol, the weeping eye of the Oracle, felt like a cold whisper on Detective Anya Sharma's skin. It was a local urban legend, a creepy campfire story about a recluse who lived deep in the woods, supposedly wise but also deeply unsettling. Was it just a coincidence? Or was Clara Donovan's disappearance tied to something far more ancient and sinister than a simple marital dispute? The symbol on Clara's locket, a tiny weeping eye etched into the silver clasp, glowed faintly under Anya's flashlight, a silent accusation. It was the mark of the Oracle of Whispering Pines, a chilling local legend, a name whispered in hushed tones around campfires. This wasn't just some random symbol. It connected directly to the Blackwood thicket, a place steeped in unsettling tales. And then a new thought, cold and sharp, pierced through Anya's weariness. Was Clara's vanishing not just a crime, but a morbid performance, a sacrifice perhaps? The air felt heavier, suddenly thick with unseen threats, as if the very trees were listening. Back at the station, the interrogation room felt like a pressure cooker. Marcus Donovan, rigid in his chair, faced Sheriff Miller, who pressed him about the life insurance policy on Clara. The amount was staggering, enough to raise every alarm bell in Miller's head. Marcus, his jaw tight, stammered through an explanation. It was financial planning, he insisted, his voice tight like a stretched wire. Just a routine update because we were trying to secure our future. But then, the lie felt flimsy, transparent, hanging in the stale air between them. Miller, relentless, brought up the security camera footage that placed Marcus too close to the park that morning. Marcus's face drained of color, his carefully constructed facade cracking under the weight of the undeniable evidence. What's worse, the news about the life insurance policy leaked, spreading through the town like wildfire. Whispers turned to shouts and suspicion solidified into outright condemnation. The once sympathetic community now looked at Marcus with cold, judging eyes. He was no longer the grieving husband. He was the primary suspect, trapped in a public crucible because in a town like Cypress Creek, reputation once lost is like a shattered mirror. Impossible to piece back together. As the pressure mounted, Lena, Clara's sister, cracked. Anya, observing Lena's increasing fragility, decided to press her, gently at first, then with quiet firmness. Lena's loyalty to Marcus, once unwavering, began to crumble under the relentless scrutiny. Lena's eyes, red-rimmed and swollen, darted from Anya to the window as if she could simply escape the uncomfortable truth. And then, in a rush of tearful confession, she admitted to something shocking. Marcus. He asked me to lie for him, she choked out, her voice barely a whisper. He was at the park that morning. Not at home, he met someone. This new revelation sent a jolt through Anya. Not only was Marcus's alibi shattered, but Lena's complicity painted a darker picture of their relationship. What else was Lena hiding if she was willing to lie for Marcus even as her own sister was missing? Anya felt it. Something wasn't right. This wasn't just a husband with a secret. This was a web, tangled and suffocating, woven with deception. From there, Anya pressed Lena about the shadowy figure in the dashcam footage, the one glimpsed just before Clara vanished. Lena initially shook her head, denying any knowledge. But as Anya patiently pushed, her voice steady and calm, Lena's resolve weakened. It was the Oracle, Lena finally whispered, her eyes wide with a fear that seemed to go deeper than just the police. Clara was obsessed. She thought the Oracle could help her find freedom. The name hung in the air, a chilling echo of the locket's symbol. Lena revealed that Clara had been secretly contacting someone online who called themselves the Oracle of Whispering Pines, supposedly an expert on local legends and hidden paths within the park. This wasn't just a quirky hobby, it was a desperate quest. Lena admitted she had deleted messages between Clara and the Oracle, fearing what Marcus would say, fearing the growing distance between the sisters. But she remembered one cryptic line from the Oracle: "The truth lies where the pines weep." This phrase, oddly poetic and deeply unsettling, pointed directly back to the Blackwood thicket. It felt like a deliberate breadcrumb, not for rescue, but for a twisted game. What would you have done if your own sister's disappearance made you realize how little you truly knew her? As a result of Lena's confession, Sheriff Miller intensified the search, focusing on the most remote and treacherous section of the Blackwood thicket, an area known as the Blackwood sector. This part of the park was a labyrinth of dense undergrowth, hidden ravines, and ancient gnarled trees that blocked out the sun. Locals avoided it because stories whispered of hikers who entered and were never seen again, swallowed whole by its shadowy embrace. And then, during the grim, methodical search, a breakthrough. A volunteer stumbled upon a discarded, mud-caked journal, half buried beneath a fallen log. It belonged to Clara. Its cover was water-damaged, but inside the handwriting was unmistakably hers. Anya, her heart pounding, began to read. The entries detailed Clara's growing obsession with the Whispering Woman legend, a local urban legend about a hiker who vanished in the same woods decades ago. Not only that, but the journal revealed Clara's increasingly erratic behavior, her desperate search for something more, something beyond her stifling life with Marcus. There were also chilling passages hinting at a burgeoning resentment towards Marcus and a desperate desire for freedom from her life. More importantly, the last entry, dated the day Clara vanished, hit Anya like a physical blow. "I'm going to meet the Oracle. Finally, I'll be free of everything." The words leaped off the page, stark and terrifying. Freedom from what? From Marcus? From Lena? From her life? The guilt that Lena felt, Anya realized, was a physical weight, pressing down on her, consuming her. Not only that, but the journal contained a crude map, drawn in shaky hand, not of the Blackwood thicket itself, but of a hidden cave system, marked with a prominent X, and the ominous words, "The Weeping Oracle." This cave system was unknown to even the most seasoned local hikers, a place whispered about in hushed tones, a place rumored to be the true heart of the Whispering Woman legend. This wasn't just a vanishing. It was a deliberate journey into the unknown, a journey Clara had undertaken alone, armed with dark secrets and desperate hopes. As a result, Sheriff Miller, his face grim, revealed that the Oracle online profile had been traced to a burner phone, its last known ping originating from a cell tower near a secluded, abandoned hunting lodge deep within the Blackwood thicket. The lodge was old, dilapidated, almost swallowed by the encroaching wilderness. The stakes were no longer just about finding a missing woman. They were about uncovering a dark conspiracy, a manipulation that had preyed on Clara's deepest vulnerabilities. And just like that, the search turned into a rescue mission with a ticking clock. To make things worse, the weather forecast warned of a severe storm rolling in, a brutal winter storm threatening to bury any remaining tracks, to erase any last signs of Clara, and to make any further search impossible. The air grew heavy, thick with the promise of falling snow. They had to move fast before the wilderness claimed Clara, and the truth, forever. His world tilted, because the wilderness felt like a living, breathing entity, its cold embrace threatening to swallow everything. Meanwhile, the psychological tension began to fray nerves at the police station. Marcus, after his disastrous interview, was released, but remained under intense surveillance. Lena, though cooperating, seemed haunted, constantly looking over her shoulder. She often sat in silence, staring at nothing, lost in her own personal hell. Anya noticed the way Lena would flinch every time Marcus's name was mentioned, a subconscious reaction that spoke volumes about their twisted connection. It was clear that the betrayal between the sisters, the affair that Lena hinted at, was a deep, festering wound. As the storm clouds gathered, casting a pall over the entire town, Anya felt the familiar weight of a case spiraling into something darker, something less tangible than mere evidence. She'd seen it before, the way a person's inner demons could become their undoing, the way secrets could consume them. Clara hadn't just vanished. She had been lured, manipulated, led down a path of no return, because someone had exploited her deepest desires for escape, for a new beginning. The core emotional question echoed in Anya's mind. Can you ever truly know the secrets hidden within the people you love? It was a question that applied not just to Clara and Marcus, but to Lena, to the mysterious oracle, and even, perhaps, to Anya herself, as she pushed herself to confront the failures of her past cases. The weight of that question pressed down on her, a chilling reminder of the unknown. But then, as Anya studied Clara's journal again, a tiny, almost invisible detail caught her eye on the crude map of the cave system. A faint, almost erased name etched beside the weeping oracle mark. A name that belonged to someone very close to Clara, someone who had seemed utterly beyond suspicion. The faded name etched on Clara's map, a name that belonged to someone impossibly close, sent a jolt through Detective Anya Sharma. It was a betrayal so profound, so unexpected, it threatened to unravel not just the case, but Anya's own understanding of trust. Could this innocent, familiar person truly be the oracle, the puppet master behind Clara's chilling disappearance? The name on Clara's crude map, almost erased yet starkly visible under Anya's determined gaze, was Dr. Eris Thorne. Not a shadowy recluse, but Clara's therapist, a charismatic self-help guru whose glossy brochures promised true freedom and shedding burdens. Anya's blood ran cold. The man Clara sought for healing was the same oracle who had led her to her potential doom. It was a twist so vile, so unexpected, it made Anya's stomach churn, because it challenged every assumption about who could be a villain. Meanwhile, the storm the forecast had warned about arrived with a vengeance. Heavy, wet snow began to fall, blanketing Cypress Creek National Park in a thick, silent shroud. The wind howled through the pines, a mournful lament that seemed to echo Anya's deepening dread. The weather turned the already treacherous Blackwood thicket into a death trap, making search efforts nearly impossible. Not only that, but the freezing temperatures and whiteout conditions created a sense of desperate urgency. If Clara was out there, exposed to the elements, time was running out. As the storm raged, Marcus Donovan, now a pariah in the public eye, found himself completely isolated. The community, once quick to offer condolences, now whispered accusations behind cupped hands. The media, like vultures, circled his grand house, their cameras flashing relentlessly. Marcus, his face drawn and haggard, tried to present an image of resilience, but his eyes, red-rimmed and darting, betrayed his inner turmoil. He paced his living room, a caged animal, feeling the walls of suspicion closing in. Because in a small town, a bad reputation spreads faster than wildfire. And then, a phone call. It was Sheriff Miller, his voice grim. Forensics had pulled more data from the burner phone linked to the Oracle. The device hadn't just been used for cryptic messages, it had placed a series of calls to a specific number, one registered to Lena, Clara's sister. This new piece of information hit Anya like a physical blow. Lena. Her betrayal ran deeper than just lying for Marcus. She was communicating with the very person manipulating her sister. Her heart dropped. Anya wasted no time. She found Lena at her home, sitting in a darkened living room, staring blankly at a muted television screen that showed a news report about Clara. Lena looked fragile, like glass about to shatter. Anya sat across from her, the silence between them heavy, charged with unspoken truths. Lena, Anya began, her voice soft but firm. We know about the phone calls to the Oracle to Dr. Eris Thorne. Lena flinched as if struck. Her eyes, wide with fear, darted to Anya, then away. No, you're wrong, she stammered, her voice thin, trembling. Clara, She was the one who talked to him. Anya nodded, understanding Lena's desperate attempt to deflect. We know Clara was communicating with him, Lena, but we also know you were. What were you discussing with Dr. Thorne? Lena's breath caught in her throat. Her body tensed on instinct. She looked down at her hands, twisting a crumpled tissue. He told me he could help Clara, she finally choked out, tears welling in her eyes. He said she was lost, that Marcus was stifling her. He said he could guide her to a new path. Lena confessed to feeling a perverse relief as Clara grew more distant from Marcus, because it opened a door for her own forbidden desires. Anya pushed gently. Did he know about your relationship with Marcus? Lena's head snapped up, her eyes wide with terror. How did you? She whispered, her voice barely audible. Anya didn't answer directly. Instead, she just held Lena's gaze, letting the silence stretch, letting the unspoken truth hang in the air. The space between facts burned. Eventually, Lena broke down completely, a torrent of confession pouring out of her. She admitted the affair with Marcus, a long-standing secret fueled by resentment and a twisted sense of belonging. She also revealed that Dr. Thorne, in his sessions with Clara, had subtly encouraged her to detach from Marcus, preying on Clara's existing insecurities and her growing desire for independence. But what was truly chilling was Lena's revelation that Thorne had also been manipulating her, Lena, weaving a web of dependency around her, convincing her that Marcus was her true soulmate, and Clara was merely an obstacle to their happiness. Thorne had essentially been playing both sisters against each other, a psychological puppet master pulling their strings. In that moment, Anya realized the full, horrifying scope of Thorne's manipulation. He hadn't just guided Clara to vanish. He had systematically isolated her, eroded her trust in her family, and groomed her for his sinister purpose. It wasn't a random act. It was a carefully constructed plan, a slow burn of psychological torment designed to make Clara willingly walk into his trap. The tension snapped. As the story unraveled, a new, unsettling piece of evidence emerged. Police, searching Thorne's clinic, discovered a series of disturbing audio recordings. They were therapy sessions between Thorne and Clara, but they were unlike any therapeutic dialogue Anya had ever heard. Thorne's voice, smooth and hypnotic, subtly pushed Clara away from her life, from Marcus, from Lena. He spoke of cleansing, of shedding old skin, of a higher plane of existence, accessible only by detachment. Clara's voice, initially hesitant, grew more receptive, almost eerily serene, as if she were under a spell. She felt it. Something wasn't right, fundamentally wrong with how Thorne operated. One recording, in particular, sent a chill down Anya's spine. It was Clara, her voice distant, almost ethereal, saying, "The oracle told me. The path to freedom lies at the stone cairn, under the full moon." The stone cairn was a landmark deep within the Blackwood thicket, rumored to be the site where the original Whispering Woman had disappeared decades ago. And the full moon? It was tonight. The urgency became a physical ache in Anya's chest. Meanwhile, media pressure reached a fever pitch. With every headline, the case became more sensational, more tragic. The narrative shifted from a missing person to a potentially ritualistic disappearance, driven by a manipulative cult leader. Experts debated Thorne's methods on television, while the public clamored for answers, for justice. The attention became a double-edged sword. It kept the case alive, but it also threatened to obscure the human pain, the raw grief, behind the lurid details. Not only that, but a forensic detail from the locket discovery now took on new, terrifying meaning. The absence of Clara's childhood photos inside it. Initially, it seemed like a small, perhaps insignificant detail. But in light of Thorne's ideology of shedding burdens and detachment, it spoke volumes. Clara had emptied the locket not because it was lost, but because she was symbolically, perhaps even literally, severing ties with her past, preparing to embrace the freedom Thorne promised. It was a haunting premonition of her psychological unraveling, a heartbreaking foreshadowing of her complete surrender to his influence. As the truth echoed, Anya understood the horrifying symbolism. The police confronted Marcus with Lena's confession about the affair and Thorne's manipulation. Marcus, for the first time, seemed truly broken, the veneer of control completely shattered. He screamed, he cried, he cursed Lena, Thorne, and himself. His internal tension erupted in a raw, gut-wrenching display of rage and despair. He confessed to his abusive behavior, to the arguments, to the moments of casual cruelty that had chipped away at Clara's spirit. He admitted that Clara had been growing increasingly distant, retreating into herself, searching for something he couldn't give her. Something inside him caved. As Marcus's world tilted, he revealed a crucial detail. Days before her disappearance, Clara had left a small sealed envelope for him, tucked inside his favorite book. He had dismissed it, too angry from their latest fight to open it. He retrieved it now, his hands trembling. Inside was a single handwritten note from Clara. It wasn't a goodbye, but a plea. "I need to find myself, Marcus, and I can't do that here. Don't look for me. Not yet. I have to go where the pines weep." And with it, a small, intricate sketch of the weeping eye symbol, identical to the one on the locket, and identical to the mark on the map. This new revelation, straight from Clara's hand, solidified the link to Thorne and his sinister influence. The realization that Clara had chosen to leave, albeit under severe manipulation, added a new, agonizing layer to the mystery. It wasn't just a kidnapping. It was a slow, deliberate seduction into a delusion, a betrayal from within. And as the storm intensified outside, blanketing the world in white, Anya knew the path to Clara lay through the darkness of Thorne's mind and the hidden depths of the Blackwood thicket. The true horror wasn't just that Clara was gone, but that she might have walked willingly into her own disappearance, believing it was salvation. But then, as Anya studied the recovered note and the crude map, a new, chilling thought emerged. The weeping eye symbol on Thorne's brochures, on Clara's locket, and now on her note. It bore an uncanny resemblance to a rare native plant known to grow only in the deepest, most inaccessible parts of the Blackwood thicket, a plant with a folklore tied to ancient forbidden rituals. The symbol, a weeping eye that mimicked a rare poisonous plant found only in the deepest, most sacred parts of the Blackwood thicket, burned in Detective Anya Sharma's mind. It wasn't just folklore. It was a blueprint. And with the full moon rising, casting long spectral shadows, Anya knew where Clara Donovan might be, but also that she might be walking into a trap of ancient, deadly design. The image of the weeping eye plant, its dark, tear-shaped leaves shimmering like sinister jewels, was etched into Anya's mind. It was a plant steeped in local legend, rumored to be used in old forbidden rituals. And then, a horrifying realization hit her. The symbol wasn't just a mark, it was a guide, leading to a truth far darker than she had imagined. The full moon, a luminous disk hanging high in the stormy sky, bathed the snow-covered landscape in an eerie silver light, making the Blackwood thicket seem both beautiful and terrifying. Anya knew, with chilling certainty, that this was the night, the moment of reckoning. Meanwhile, Dr. Aris Thorne, oblivious to the unraveling of his carefully constructed world, remained serene, almost disturbingly calm. He sat in his secluded commune, nestled deep within the woods, seemingly untouched by the chaos he had unleashed. His followers, a small group of devout individuals drawn to his promises of enlightenment and freedom, moved around him like quiet shadows. He believed he was guiding souls, not destroying lives, because his delusion was as vast and intricate as the forest itself. As the storm intensified, battering the windows of the police station, Lena, Clara's sister, huddled in the interrogation room, her confession about the affair and Thorne's manipulation still echoing in the cold air. Her vulnerability was palpable, raw. And then, Lena's eyes, red-rimmed and swollen from endless tears, fixated on Anya. "He spoke of A final cleansing, Lena whispered, her voice barely a breath. A place where all earthly burdens are shed. He called it the sanctuary. The word itself, meant to be comforting, now sounded chilling, ominous. Anya pressed her. Where is this sanctuary, Lena? Lena shook her head, tears streaming down her face. I don't know. He never said. But Clara believed him. She really believed he could make her truly free. Lena's words were laced with regret, a heavy cloak of guilt that seemed to weigh her down. She felt it. Something wasn't right, fundamentally wrong with how she had let her resentment blind her. Anya, her mind racing, put the pieces together. The weeping eye plant, the stone cairn, the full moon, Thorne's twisted philosophy, and now, the mention of a sanctuary. It all pointed to a specific, sacred, and deeply hidden location within the Blackwood thicket, a place known only to a select few, probably passed down through generations of local folklore. The urgency became a physical ache in Anya's chest, a burning need to act before it was too late. His world tilted. What's worse, a startling revelation came from Marcus. Still reeling from Lena's confession and the exposure of his own volatile nature, Marcus had stumbled upon a forgotten box of Clara's old journals, not the one found in the thicket, but earlier ones, dating back years. These journals chronicled not just Clara's growing unhappiness, but also her deep-seated fascination with the Blackwood thicket's ancient lore. They spoke of the Whispering Woman, a legend of a woman who vanished in the woods, supposedly achieving enlightenment. But more disturbing were the entries describing Clara's increasingly erratic behavior, her vivid nightmares, and her conviction that she was being called by something, or someone, from the forest. She had begun leaving small, strange offerings at the base of certain old trees, a ritual she believed would bring her closer to understanding the true spirit of the woods. Marcus, in his self-absorbed world, had dismissed them as Clara's artistic eccentricities. Why didn't I see it sooner? The signs were always there. As a result, Anya realized that Clara hadn't just been manipulated. She had been primed. Her vulnerabilities, her long-standing fascination with the mystical, her deep-seated unhappiness. Thorne had simply exploited these existing cracks, turning Clara's spiritual quest into a pathway to his sinister agenda. It wasn't a sudden break. It was a slow, insidious corruption of her spirit, a methodical grooming that took years to culminate. And just like that, the psychological heart of the story fractured. Meanwhile, back at the station, the forensic team, working tirelessly against the clock, made another shocking discovery. The small, encrypted data chip recovered from Thorne's office. It contained not just video footage, but a series of cryptic messages between Thorne and an unknown third party. These messages discussed the final phase, the chosen one, and a disturbing reference to sacred blood. The language was chillingly cult-like, revealing a network of manipulation far larger than just Clara. The messages hinted at other chosen ones, other individuals who had undergone similar transformations and vanishings, suggesting Clara was not the first. This wasn't a lone wolf. It was a carefully orchestrated operation, a dark and insidious web reaching far beyond Cypress Creek. And then, as Anya studied the recovered footage from the chip, a new, horrifying detail emerged. The grainy, shaky recording from the Blackwood sector showed Clara, not struggling, but walking calmly, almost serenely, towards a hidden cave entrance, guided by Thorne. Her face, in the brief moments of clarity, showed a disturbing mix of serene acceptance and something else, a deep, almost desperate yearning. Thorne closed the entrance behind her. But then, just before the footage cut out, Clara turned back, her eyes wide, a fleeting look of profound terror on her face. Her breath caught. What did she see? What was the meaning of that final agonizing expression? This last image was a gut punch. It shattered the illusion of Clara's willing departure. She might have gone in willingly, but something had changed in those final moments, something that filled her with pure, unadulterated fear. It was a chilling contradiction that tore at Anya's soul. The space between facts burned. The search team, now a determined, desperate force, pushed through the worsening storm, guided by the last known ping from Thorne's burner phone and the crude map from Clara's journal. They focused on a remote, almost forgotten area of the Blackwood thicket, a section marked by ancient gnarled trees and a treacherous, winding path that seemed to lead nowhere. The wind howled, whipping snow into their faces, making visibility almost zero. It was a desperate race against time, against the elements, against a truth that was slowly, agonizingly, revealing itself. Her body remembered the fear. What followed was a tense, dangerous journey. The silence of the snow-covered forest was broken only by the crunch of boots and the desperate calls of searchers. Anya, pushing through the thick undergrowth, felt the cold seep into her bones. She thought of Clara, alone in this unforgiving wilderness, potentially trapped, terrified. The thought fueled her, gave her a relentless drive. Meanwhile, back in town, the psychological suspense reached a breaking point for Marcus. The news reports about Thorne's manipulation, coupled with the revelation of Clara's note, drove him to the brink. He saw himself, for the first time, not as the wronged husband, but as a silent accomplice to Clara's disappearance, because his neglect and controlling behavior had inadvertently pushed her into Thorne's orbit. He wandered through his grand, empty house, the silence amplifying his guilt. Every shadow seemed to mock him, every creak of the floorboards a ghostly whisper of Clara's absence. And then, Marcus found an old, faded photograph tucked away in a dusty photo album. It was a picture of Clara as a teenager, standing by the stone cairn in the Blackwood thicket, her arm around a tall, lanky boy with a shy smile. It was Dr. Eris Thorne, years before he became the charismatic guru, back when he was just a local boy, with an unusual fascination for ancient legends. The photograph was dated years before Thorne began his therapy practice, long before Clara had sought him out. It revealed a hidden past, a connection between Clara and Thorne that predated their professional relationship, a deep-rooted history that added another layer of sinister manipulation. This wasn't a chance encounter. It was a long game, a pre-existing bond that Thorne had exploited with chilling precision. His name hung in the room, a ghostly echo of betrayal. This was the twist. Thorne hadn't just met Clara through therapy. He had known her for years, perhaps even decades. Their past connection, hidden in plain sight, was the true key to understanding his profound influence over her. It meant his manipulation was not just recent, but a long, slow burn, a calculated plot years in the making. The realization was horrifying, suggesting a depth of depravity Anya hadn't fully grasped. It challenged Anya's assumptions, forcing her to reevaluate everything she thought she knew about Thorne, about Clara, and about the nature of their relationship. But then, as Anya studied the old photograph, a new, unsettling detail emerged. Not only was Thorne in the picture, but partially obscured in the background, almost hidden by the dense trees, was Lena, Clara's sister, her face grim, watching them, suggesting a complicity that reached far back into their shared past, a secret Lena had kept buried for decades. The faded photograph revealed Lena, Clara's sister, lurking in the background, a silent, grim observer, in a moment between Clara and Dr. Eris Thorne years ago. It shattered every assumption about Lena's role, pulling her into the heart of a chilling deception that stretched back decades. What secrets had Lena been holding, and what was her true part in Clara's vanishing? The tension snapped. The image of Lena in that old photograph half hidden by the trees, her face etched with a grim expression as she watched Clara and Dr. Eris Thorne, felt like a punch to Detective Anya Sharma's gut. It suggested a secret Lena had kept buried for decades, a complicity that reached far back into their shared past. And then, a horrifying realization. Lena wasn't just a grieving sister or a betrayed lover. She was a silent, perhaps even willing participant in Clara's unraveling. The air crackled with unspoken truths, suddenly thick with the stench of betrayal. Meanwhile, the storm howled outside, a white curtain of snow that seemed to mirror the chaos unfolding. The biting wind whipped through the blackwood thicket, a relentless force that made the desperate search for Clara even more precarious. But Anya knew, with chilling certainty, that the final confrontation was imminent, because every clue, every revelation, pointed to one inevitable conclusion. Thorn was not just a manipulator, he was a captor, and Clara was his ultimate prize. As the police converged on Dr. Eris Thorn's secluded commune, the atmosphere was electric with tension. The once tranquil setting, nestled deep within the whispering pines, now felt like a fortress under siege. Thorn's followers, a small insular group, emerged from their cabins, their faces bewildered, some defiant. They moved with a disturbing, almost hypnotic calm, eyes fixed on Thorn, as if he possessed some otherworldly power. And then, as the sirens wailed, echoing through the snow-laden trees, the scene erupted into controlled chaos. What followed was a swift and decisive police raid. Officers swarmed the compound, their flashlights cutting through the dim light of the snow-filled morning. They secured the perimeter, their movements precise and practiced. Anya, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and grim determination, led a team directly to Thorn's main cabin, the heart of his twisted operation. The door, surprisingly, was unlocked, as if Thorn had been expecting them, inviting them into his web. Inside, the cabin was sparsely furnished but meticulously organized. Every object seemed to have its place, every surface gleaming with an unnatural cleanliness. It felt less like a home and more like a carefully constructed stage. And then, they found him, Dr. Eris Thorn. He sat in a lotus position on a meditation mat, eyes closed, a faint, almost serene smile playing on his lips. He was completely undisturbed, as if the world outside, with its sirens and flashing lights, was merely a distant hum. His composure was unsettling, because it spoke of a man utterly convinced of his own righteousness. Even in the face of imminent arrest, Anya approached him cautiously, her hand resting on her holstered weapon. "Dr. Thorn," she stated, her voice firm, cutting through the eerie silence. "You're under arrest for the kidnapping and disappearance of Clara Donovan." Thorn slowly opened his eyes, his gaze unnervingly calm, almost pitying. "Kidnapping?" he said, his voice soft, melodious, like a gentle breeze. "No, detective. Clara chose her path. I merely guided her." He spoke as if discussing a spiritual journey, not a heinous crime. Not only that, but as officers began to secure the cabin, they uncovered disturbing evidence. Hidden compartments beneath the floorboards revealed not just Thorn's journals, filled with delusional ramblings about ascension and chosen ones, but also a meticulously kept ledger. It detailed a chilling network of other vanishings over the years, individuals who had sought Thorn's guidance and had subsequently disappeared, their cases either gone cold or dismissed as runaways. Clara was not his first victim. She was merely the latest in a long line of lost souls he had exploited, because his twisted ideology demanded sacrifice. Meanwhile, back at the station, Marcus Donovan, now free from surveillance but consumed by guilt, watched the news reports about Thorn's arrest. The image of Thorn's serene face, coupled with Lena's earlier confession, ignited a raw, primal rage within him. Marcus had pushed Clara away, yes, but Thorn had led her to her doom. He paced his living room, his mind a maelstrom of regret and fury. Something inside him caved as the bitter truth settled over him. What's worse, a flash of insight struck Marcus. He remembered Clara mentioning a specific, ancient family heirloom, a small silver compass that had belonged to her great-grandmother. Clara had told him it was enchanted, believed it could point the way to true freedom. He had scoffed at it then, dismissing it as childish fancy. But now it resonated with Thorn's teachings. Clara had always carried it with her, clipped to her running shorts. It wasn't found at the initial search site or with her earbuds. He searched her room frantically, tearing through drawers until he found a hidden compartment in her jewelry box. Empty. Clara had taken the compass with her. It was a crucial piece of evidence because it directly linked Clara's spiritual beliefs to her final journey, providing an additional layer of tragic, self-inflicted complicity. As the forensic team processed Thorne's commune, they found the entrance to a hidden bunker, cleverly concealed beneath a large, flat rock near the stone cairn. It was a marvel of hidden engineering, a testament to Thorne's methodical planning. Inside, it was fully stocked, not just with supplies but with eerie, almost ritualistic items. Dried herbs, ancient symbols painted on the walls, and a small makeshift altar. It felt like a tomb, a place designed for spiritual transformation, or perhaps ultimate confinement. And then, as officers began to explore the bunker, a chilling discovery. Neatly arranged on the altar was Clara's silver compass. It was open, its needle pointing not north, but straight down, into a narrow crevice in the bunker's floor. The crevice was almost imperceptible, hidden by loose rocks and dirt, but the compass, Clara's guiding light, pointed directly to it. This was the sanctuary Lena had spoken of, the place where Thorne believed Clara had found her true freedom. What followed was a moment of raw truth. Thorne, brought to the bunker, remained impassive, his gaze fixed on the compass. "She entered willingly," he reiterated, his voice a calm murmur. "She sought her transcendence. The compass guided her to the true path." He spoke of Clara as if she were a spirit, already ethereal, already beyond earthly concerns. He didn't confess to physical harm. He confessed to guidance, to belief, to a profound delusion. His mask slipped entirely, revealing not a villain, but a dangerously unhinged man, utterly convinced of his warped reality. Anya, however, refused to accept his narrative. She examined the crevice closely. It was far too narrow for a person to easily enter, more like a fissure in the earth than a path. And then she noticed subtle scrape marks on the rock surrounding the entrance, as if something, or someone, had been forced through. She also noticed faint, almost invisible blood smears, dried and dark, clinging to the rough edges of the stone. This wasn't a willing descent. It was a desperate struggle. Her mind screamed, understanding the terror Clara must have felt. As a result, the crisis reached its peak. Anya, fueled by a surge of righteous fury, turned to Thorne. "She didn't enter willingly," Anya spat, her voice cold with contempt. "You forced her. You trapped her." Thorne merely smiled, a beatific, infuriating smile. "Truth is subjective, detective." Clara found what she was looking for. His words were designed to mock, to infuriate, to break Anya's resolve. Meanwhile, Sheriff Miller received a call from forensics. They had analyzed the weeping eye plant. It was a highly toxic species known to cause disorientation, paralysis, and in large doses, a profound, dreamlike stupor, followed by organ failure. The plants had been found growing in pots within Thorne's commune, carefully cultivated. Thorne had been not just psychologically manipulating Clara, but likely physically incapacitating her, preparing her for her forced transcendence. The extent of his cruelty was chilling. And then, a violent flashback. Anya remembered a detail from Clara's old journals that Marcus had found, an entry describing a blinding headache and a strange, sweet smell in Thorne's office just days before her disappearance. She had dismissed it as a migraine. Now it made horrifying sense. Thorne had been administering the plant's essence to Clara, slowly poisoning her, making her susceptible to his suggestions, preparing her for the final act. In the span of a breath, everything clicked into place. Thorne had groomed Clara, physically and mentally, using her inner turmoil and her spiritual seeking as a weapon. He had cultivated her belief in the oracle, in the sanctity of the Blackwood thicket, in the idea of shedding burdens. He had orchestrated her final journey to the stone cairn, knowing she would be weakened, disoriented by the plant's toxins. He hadn't just guided her. He had led her, step by insidious step, into a meticulously planned trap. But one thing still didn't make sense. If Thorne wanted Clara to simply vanish, To become another lost soul in his twisted ledger? Why, deep inside the bunker, did the metal rungs of a hidden ladder lead not down but mysteriously up towards an unknown sealed passage, suggesting another way out? Or perhaps another victim trapped within the heart of the Oracle's lair? The chilling discovery of a hidden ladder leading up from Thorne's bunker, not down, threw Detective Anya Sharma into a fresh spiral of dread. It meant Clara Donovan wasn't just trapped. She might have been a means to an end, a key to unlock another more terrifying secret in the heart of the Blackwood thicket. What, or who, was at the top of that hidden ascent, and what dark purpose did they serve? The upward climbing ladder within Thorne's bunker, a stark contradiction to his narrative of Clara's descent into freedom, was a gut punch. It wasn't just a hidden passage, it was a horrifying question mark, a chilling open loop that demanded answers. It suggested another exit, another purpose, perhaps even another victim, trapped within the heart of the Oracle's lair. And then, a new theory, cold and sharp, solidified in Anya's mind. Clara wasn't just a lost soul. She was a means, a pawn in a far more elaborate and terrifying game. Meanwhile, Dr. Eris Thorne, now in police custody, maintained his eerie composure. He sat in the interrogation room, his gaze distant, his answers evasive, shrouded in the language of spiritual enlightenment. He spoke of Clara's ascension, of her shedding earthly bonds, as if her disappearance was a triumph, not a tragedy. His serene defiance was infuriating, because it seemed to mock the very concept of justice. As the forensic team meticulously processed Thorne's commune, they made a critical discovery in his personal journal. A meticulously drawn map of the hidden cave system in the Blackwood thicket, far more detailed than Clara's crude sketch. This map didn't just show the sanctuary cave where Clara presumably entered. It extended further, illustrating a complex network of underground tunnels, chambers, and most chillingly, a series of hidden access points marked with the same weeping eye symbol. The upward ladder in the bunker, Anya realized, led to one of these secret passages, suggesting an elaborate escape route or a different kind of imprisonment. What's worse, the journal contained Thorne's chilling philosophical musings. He wrote about a sacred lineage, a bloodline he believed was destined to unlock ancient knowledge hidden deep within the earth. He believed that certain individuals, like Clara, possessed a unique spiritual resonance, a key that could activate these hidden pathways. This wasn't just psychological manipulation. It was a full-blown delusion of grandeur, a dangerous cult of one. The air grew heavy with the weight of his madness. Back in town, the news of Thorne's arrest and the grotesque details of his commune exploded. The media, no longer just reporting, began to sensationalize, creating a frenzied narrative around cults and ritualistic disappearances. The quiet, suburban community of Cypress Creek was shattered, their sense of safety irrevocably broken. People looked at each other with suspicion, wondering who among them might have been drawn into Thorne's insidious web. And then Lena, Clara's sister, called Anya, her voice a raw, ragged sound. She had seen the news, the images of Thorne's compound, the reports of other disappearances linked to him. The others, Lena gasped. The ones in his ledger, are they like Clara? Were they forced to? Her guilt, a tangible entity, weighed her down, because she had dismissed Thorne's influence on Clara for so long, blinded by her own secret desires. Lena confessed to a terrifying premonition that Thorne had not simply guided Clara to vanish, but that he had orchestrated her ascension for a much darker, unknown purpose, perhaps to harness her unique, spiritual resonance to unlock something within the earth. This new revelation, straight from Lena's terrified admission, suggested Thorne's aims were not just about control, but about a twisted, arcane objective. Anya connected it to the sacred lineage mentioned in Thorne's journal. It meant Clara was a tool, a means to an end, a living key to unlock a deeper mystery, a hidden power perhaps, located within the ancient caves. The realization was horrifying, suggesting a depth of depravity that transcended simple kidnapping. Meanwhile, Marcus Donovan, now completely broken by the cascading revelations, demanded to speak with Anya. He sat in the interrogation room, his face pale, his eyes hollow. He confessed to an even deeper secret. Years ago, when Clara first started seeing Thorne, Marcus had been suspicious. He had hired a private investigator to look into Thorne's past. The investigator found nothing concrete, but he did uncover a sealed juvenile record for Thorne, detailing a history of profound emotional disturbance and a bizarre fascination with ancient, esoteric texts. Marcus, focused on saving his marriage, had dismissed it, convinced Thorne was just a quack. Why didn't I see it sooner? The signs were always there. The opportunity to expose Thorne, to save Clara, had been right there, and Marcus, in his arrogance, had ignored it. What followed was a harrowing confrontation. Anya brought Lena and Marcus together in the interrogation room, their faces etched with grief and accusation. The raw emotions in the room were palpable, a storm of regret, anger, and shattered trust. Marcus lashed out at Lena, blaming her for her affair with him, for her complicity with Thorne, for not seeing the danger. Lena, in turn, accused Marcus of pushing Clara away, of being blind to her unhappiness, of allowing Thorne to gain such a foothold in Clara's life. Their arguments were a painful symphony of blame, revealing the fractured reality of their family. And then, Anya revealed the truth about the upward climbing ladder and Thorne's journal entries about sacred lineage and unlocking ancient knowledge. She explained her theory. Thorne hadn't just intended for Clara to vanish. He intended for her to access something, or activate something, deep within the hidden cave system. He saw her as a living conduit, a key to a secret he believed was buried beneath the blackwood thicket. The true horror wasn't just that Clara was gone, but that her disappearance was part of a grotesque, ritualistic purpose. As a result, a chilling memory resurfaced for Marcus. He recalled an old, dusty book in Clara's personal library, a rare leather-bound volume on local folklore and geology. Clara had spent hours poring over it, making notes in the margins, especially in sections about the Blackwood Thicket's unique rock formations and whispered tales of underground rivers and speaking stones. He had thought it was just her artistic research. Now, he recognized the profound significance. This book, he realized, was Thorne's true guide, his blueprint. He hadn't just relied on legends. He had studied the very geology of the land, finding its secret veins, its hidden arteries. Meanwhile, forensic teams, guided by Thorne's detailed map, finally breached the upward passage from the bunker. The tunnel was narrow, claustrophobic, leading deep into the earth. It was a perilous journey, but the possibility of finding Clara, or at least answers, propelled them forward. The air grew heavy, damp, smelling of ancient earth and something else, something metallic and sharp, like stale blood. The air felt heavier because the truth was a physical weight, pressing down on everyone. As the tunnel opened into a large cavernous chamber, the searchlights revealed a horrifying scene. The walls were covered in crude drawings depicting the weeping eye symbol and figures engaged in what appeared to be ancient, disturbing rituals. There were signs of recent activity: makeshift bedding, a small cold fire pit, and scattered implements that looked both primitive and disturbingly modern. It was a makeshift lair, a hidden sanctuary for Thorne's deepest delusions. And then, they found it. Not Clara, but a series of large, cylindrical containers, hidden behind a false wall, each sealed tightly. When opened, they revealed not human remains, but dozens of smaller, intricate lockets identical to Clara's, each with the weeping eye symbol, and each containing a single, dried, dark, tear-shaped leaf of the toxic weeping eye plant. These were the sacred blood references in Thorne's journal, his ritualistic tools, perhaps even souvenirs from his other vanishings. His mind screamed, understanding the chilling implications. What's worse, the forensic team discovered a small, intricately carved stone tablet in the center of the cavern, covered in symbols that matched the drawings on the walls. It pulsed with a faint, almost imperceptible warmth. As a geology expert on the team examined it, he made a startling announcement. The tablet was not just an artifact. It was a natural geode, containing a rare, highly magnetic mineral unique to this specific region. The expert explained that during certain lunar phases, like a full moon, the mineral would resonate, emitting a subtle, almost undetectable electromagnetic pulse. Thorne's belief in spiritual resonance wasn't entirely baseless. He had found a tangible, albeit naturally occurring, phenomenon that aligned with his delusional framework. This discovery, while scientifically explainable, solidified Thorne's ultimate twisted purpose. He wasn't just making people vanish, he was using them, or their resonance, to activate something, to connect to something, within the earth itself. Clara's unique spiritual resonance was merely a means to harness this natural phenomenon, to fulfill his mad quest for ancient knowledge, or perhaps power. The silence of the cave, broken only by the drip of water, suddenly felt deafening. Anya realized the sickening truth. Thorne hadn't just been manipulating Clara, he had been exploiting a natural geological anomaly, weaving it into his delusion, using vulnerable individuals as unwitting instruments for his bizarre rituals. Clara's final look of terror wasn't just fear of being trapped, it was the horrifying realization that she was being used, sacrificed for something she didn't understand. The true villain wasn't just a madman, he was a twisted genius who merged science with superstition, creating a horrifying reality from a disturbed imagination. But then, as Anya surveyed the cavern, her flashlight beam flickered across a small, almost invisible opening in the rock ceiling, directly above the magnetic geode, and from it, a faint, metallic glint. A tiny chain leading up into the absolute darkness, suggesting not an escape route, but a desperate, final attempt by Clara to leave a message, or a last horrifying testament. The metallic glint high above the geode, a tiny chain leading into impenetrable darkness, was the last, most agonizing open loop. It was a silent testament, a desperate final message from Clara Donovan. What impossible truth did it hold? And what would it reveal about the ultimate fate of a woman swallowed by madness and mystery? The tiny chain, glinting faintly in the harsh beam of the flashlight, disappearing into the blackness above the magnetic geode, was a cruel, final twist. It was a desperate plea, a last horrifying testament from Clara Donovan, suspended in the cold, damp air of the cavern. It suggested not an escape, but a desperate attempt to leave behind a clue, a truth hidden from Dr. Eris Thorne. And then, a profound sadness settled over Detective Anya Sharma, a chilling understanding of Clara's final terrifying moments. Meanwhile, Dr. Eris Thorne, now fully exposed, his delusions laid bare, sat in a sterile interrogation room. He spoke in riddles, quoting ancient texts and spiritual philosophies, his mind a fortress of madness that no logical question could breach. He maintained that Clara had achieved transcendence, that her sacrifice was a necessary step towards unlocking profound knowledge. His composure was unnerving, because it spoke of a man utterly convinced of his own twisted reality, even as the world around him crumbled. As the forensic team carefully ascended the hidden ladder, their flashlights piercing the absolute darkness, the air grew colder, heavier. The climb was treacherous, the rock face slick with moisture. Anya, her heart pounding with a mixture of dread and grim determination, watched from below, her gaze fixed on the tiny point of light above, hoping for answers, fearing the truth. And then, a triumphant shout echoed from above. "We found something!" What followed was a moment of profound, gut-wrenching silence. The forensic team carefully lowered a small, waterproof capsule, intricately crafted from a local wood and resin, attached to the end of the chain. Inside, nestled on a bed of dried, weeping eye plant leaves, was Clara's final message. It wasn't a letter or a plea for help. It was a miniature, exquisitely carved wooden bird, Clara's signature artistic motif, but unlike any she had ever crafted. Its eyes, made of tiny black polished stones, seemed to weep, and etched into its base, almost imperceptibly, were two words: "He is." The message was incomplete, fragmented, a chilling puzzle piece in a larger, horrifying picture. What's worse, the bird was hollow. Inside, a tiny rolled-up piece of paper revealed Clara's final, desperate act of defiance. A single, minutely detailed sketch. It was not of Thorn or the cave, but of Lena, Clara's sister, standing by the stone cairn, her face etched with a dark, triumphant smile. And then in Lena's outstretched hand was a small, ornate dagger, its blade glinting, poised to strike. The drawing was raw, visceral, a horrifying vision of betrayal. Anya's blood ran cold. The silence of the cavern was broken only by the gasp that escaped her lips. This was the ultimate twist, the final devastating betrayal. Lena, not just a complicit bystander, but an active participant, a predator in plain sight. The truth wasn't just hidden. It had been actively, maliciously, concealed by the very person Clara trusted. It shattered every assumption, turning the entire narrative on its head. Her heart dropped, because the truth was a physical blow, leaving her breathless. Meanwhile, the media coverage of Thorn's arrest reached a fever pitch, but the new evidence from the cavern, the incomplete message, and especially Clara's final drawing, remained a closely guarded secret, known only to Anya and a select few on the investigation team. Anya knew that releasing this information prematurely would only create more chaos and potentially jeopardize the true perpetrator. As a result, a new agonizing line of inquiry emerged for Anya. She reviewed every piece of evidence with fresh eyes, replaying conversations with Lena, searching for the hidden threads of malice she had so carelessly overlooked. Lena's shifting alibis, her feigned distress, her unsettling connection to Thorn, it all clicked into place, painting a chilling picture of calculated deception. Lena hadn't been an unwitting pawn. She had been a willing accomplice, perhaps even the architect of Clara's ultimate demise. The space between facts burned with this terrifying new understanding. Anya decided on a new approach. She confronted Marcus Donovan, now a shell of his former self, ravaged by guilt and public condemnation. She showed him the wooden bird, the words, "He is," and finally, Clara's sketch of Lena with the dagger. Marcus stared at the drawing, his face draining of all color. He crumpled to the floor, sobbing uncontrollably. "Lena," he choked out. "She hated Clara. She always did. She was jealous. Of everything. Her talent, her light, even of me." He confessed that Lena's resentment had festered for years, a dark undercurrent beneath their seemingly close sisterly bond. He recalled moments when Lena would subtly undermine Clara, make passive-aggressive remarks, or even directly contradict Clara's artistic ideas disguised as helpful feedback. His world tilted because the woman he had sought comfort from was a viper, lurking in the shadows. This new revelation, straight from Marcus's broken heart, confirmed Anya's darkest suspicions. Lena's complicity ran deeper than just lying for Marcus. It was rooted in a profound, long-standing jealousy and a festering hatred that had finally exploded into lethal action. The true horror wasn't just that Clara was gone, but that her vanishing was a culmination of a lifetime of resentment, orchestrated by the one person she trusted implicitly. And then, a new theory emerged for Anya. The weeping eye plant's toxins, the magnetic geode, Thorn's delusions, these were all tools, distractions, a smokescreen. Lena, knowing Thorn's eccentricities and Clara's spiritual fascinations, had likely fed Thorn information, subtly guiding his manipulation of Clara, pushing him towards his ritual, while planning her own horrific conclusion. Lena had used Thorn as a weapon, orchestrating his twisted game to eliminate her sister, believing his madness would provide perfect cover. Anya felt it. Something wasn't right, fundamentally wrong, with how she had judged Lena's true nature. What followed was a silent, psychological battle. Anya orchestrated a final, unannounced interview with Lena, subtly bringing up old family stories, little details about Clara's childhood, things only a sister would know. Lena, increasingly agitated, began to falter, her carefully constructed composure cracking under the weight of her hidden guilt. Anya placed the wooden bird on the table between them, its tiny black eyes seeming to weep, and then, without a word, slid Clara's final drawing across to Lena. Lena's face drained of color, her eyes wide and terrified fixed on the sketch, a mirror image of her own malicious intent. Her breath caught in her throat. Her body remembered the fear, the moment she thought her secret was safe. She looked at Anya, then back at the drawing, her gaze filled with a desperate, trapped animal's panic. The silence grew louder, a deafening roar in Lena's ears. Anya's voice, calm and steady, broke the silence. Clara left this, Lena. Her final message. She knew. Lena's facade shattered. Tears streamed down her face, not of grief, but of rage and bitter defeat. She slammed her fist on the table. She deserved it. Lena shrieked, her voice raw, guttural. Always the favored one, always Clara, Clara, Clara. She took everything from me. Marcus, even our parents' love. Lena confessed to following Clara to the stone cairn, to the final, chilling confrontation. She admitted to seeing Clara weakened by Thorn's toxins, desperate and disoriented. She confessed to using the dagger, to silencing Clara, believing that with Clara gone, she could finally have Marcus, finally be free of her sister's shadow. As Lena's confession poured out, a torrent of years of suppressed resentment and jealousy, the police, who had been listening from behind a one-way mirror, moved in. Lena was immediately arrested. The confrontation was explosive, raw, and utterly devastating. The true nature of Clara's vanishing was laid bare, not a mystical disappearance, but a calculated murder fueled by a lifetime of sibling rivalry and a desperate hunger for what another possessed. In the stillness that followed, Anya felt a profound weariness. The mystery was solved, the perpetrators apprehended, but the lingering pain, the echoes of betrayal, would forever haunt Cypress Creek. Clara Donovan had not found true freedom in the Blackwood thicket. She had found a tragic end at the hands of those closest to her, lured into a madman's delusion, and then brutally betrayed by her own blood. The legacy of Clara Donovan's vanishing hung heavy over Cypress Creek, a town forever marked by the dark secrets it had unearthed. Dr. Eris Thorne, deemed mentally unfit to stand trial for murder, was committed to a high-security psychiatric facility, his deluded mind still convinced he had led Clara to ascension. Lena, Clara's sister, pleaded guilty to murder, her face a mask of bitter resentment, even as she was sentenced to life in prison. She never expressed remorse, only a chilling sense of justification. Marcus Donovan, stripped of his reputation, his wealth, and his family, vanished from public life. He sold his grand house, a painful reminder of his fractured past, and retreated into a lonely existence, forever haunted by his complicity, his blindness, and the silent screams of the wife he had inadvertently pushed into the path of destruction. He carried the burden of his actions like a physical weight, a constant gnawing pain in his soul. The Blackwood thicket, once a place of natural beauty, now held a darker, more ominous reputation. Locals avoided it, whispers of Clara's tragic fate echoing through the ancient trees. The cave system, the sanctuary, was sealed off, a tomb of secrets and shattered dreams, a chilling reminder of the evil that had festered beneath the earth. Anya Sharma, though lauded for solving the complex case, carried the weight of it deeply. The image of Clara's wooden bird, the words, "He is," and the horrifying sketch of Lena were seared into her memory. She knew that some truths, once unearthed, leave indelible scars, forever changing the landscape of a community and the hearts of those who seek them. She looked at the moon, full and serene, knowing that beneath its peaceful glow, the depths of human darkness often hid in plain sight. The empty swing set in Clara and Marcus's now sold backyard swayed gently in the wind, a silent, poignant symbol of a life abruptly ended, a family irrevocably broken, and a legacy of betrayal that would forever echo through the quiet pines of Cypress Creek. And as the wind shifted, carrying a whisper through the trees, one couldn't help but ask, if you had known the secrets, the hidden resentments, the slow-burning jealousies, would you have seen the monster hiding in plain sight? Or would you too have been fooled by the perfect smile, The unraveling of Clara Donovan's vanishing exposes layers of psychological manipulation and chilling betrayal. Her story leaves us with a haunting question about the true cost of hidden resentments and the masks people wear. Do you want to delve deeper into the twisted mind of Dr. Eris Thorne, exploring the origins of his delusions and his network of other vanishings? Or perhaps would you prefer to examine the long-term psychological impact on Marcus and Lena, exploring the aftermath of their devastating choices?